And thank you everyone else for coming as well. I do want to talk about collaboration that has occurred with myself and with others over quite a long period of time, but I want to focus on the School of Education in terms of that activity. And just the first point to make is that the School of Education within the faculty has had quite extensive engagement with China over quite a number of years, and current staff in the school that have either current or recent activity in China include Brian Devlin, Paul Black, Gretchen Gang, who's going to talk a little bit about hers later on. Ruth Wallace, who's actually now with the Northern Institute, but she's still sort of part of education. Dr. Greg Smith, and of course Peter Kell, who recently came to us from Hong Kong, and I think Hong Kong is still part of China. So his links to China are still quite active. But in the past, we've had other staff, including Darryl Kavanagh, Kim Tan and Peter Wignall. Some people might have remembered those names, and of course myself. And my activity in China in terms of actual contact with people in China goes back now for 13 years. And I find myself getting to China, very fortunately, 2 or 3 times a year, which I enjoy greatly. So the school has substantial association with institutions and with individuals in China, and not just myself. But in terms of my work and the things that I've been doing over that time, I want to mention 4 pillars of activity and then particularly pick up on the first one. But the first pillar is work involved in an institution called UNESCO In-World Ed, and in particular I want to mention some work in the last decade, but particularly the last 3 years in education for rural transformation. More recently, I've had engagement in Western China, again in Xinjiang province. Our first speaker was from, at Xinjiang Normal University. Have visited there twice in terms of establishing collaboration, been working with a number of staff there, and we hope to have a team come from that university later this year to visit us to further that collaboration. Also, for a number of years, I've had association with the International Institute of Teacher Education at the East China Normal University, and also with Nanjing Normal University with a number of staff there who more recently I've been doing some video interactions with their graduate students in terms of trying to explore different methods and modes of teaching. And of course, the last pillar, we have 2 visiting scholars who've only been here a couple of weeks, Go Piying and Li Shuling, just here, if you could just stand up. They're still a bit shell-shocked having arrived only a couple of weeks ago, but they're with us for a year to do some work, and I'll talk briefly a little bit about some of that activity as well. UNESCO In-World Ed, this photograph is of its original headquarters in a place called Baoding. It used to be about an hour and 20 minutes from Beijing, but now it's about 40 minutes by fast train. It's a UNESCO Level 2 centre with some minimal funding from UNESCO in terms of project activity, but it's primarily funded by the Chinese government. It's now located and has been for the last 2 or nearly 3 years at Beijing Normal University. This photograph's actually of the main administration building at Beijing Normal University, but In-World Ed are in the throes of completing a new building just behind that structure we're seeing here, which we hope to open in the next few months. It's been around for 15 years, so it's not something that's recent, and over that time it's been engaged in a range of activities through a number of centres located in China, at Beijing Normal University, at Baoding still, at Nanjing Normal University, at Gansu Institute for Educational Research, and just a year ago we established a centre at Chengdu as well. Professor Wong Li is the Deputy Director of the Centre, and in a sense is really the operational manager, just like we have a Vice-Chancellor, which some Chinese can't understand how the Vice-Chancellor is actually the operational manager. The Deputy Director of the Centre is essentially the operational manager, and he's a graduate of our university, Charles Darwin University, and his study was on looking at how a university provides educational services to rural and remote communities, and he did a comparative study with Chinese and Charles Darwin University. And of course, the board is chaired by a Vice Minister for Education, which indicates the prestige that the Chinese government give to this education institution. And so I had the pleasure to meet with the Vice Minister in my role as an advisor to the board. The board meets once a year. In the last 10 years, they've been engaged through this centre in a whole range of projects, but one central theme that's come through has been about education for rural transformation. And in 2001, the centre developed a publication which I was involved in terms of a policy document giving direction for the roles of education within rural transformation. We've done a number of things over that time, but over the last 3 years, we've had a project which has been going through international collaboration between 3 groups. Inworld Ed is one, the Stockholm University is another, and a number of parties out of India have been involved looking at a theme of rural education for rural transformation, and we've had 3 symposiums out of that and 3 sets of publications. And also, out of that work has come another publication just this year, which I had involvement in. It was a book in relation to skills, the role of skills and TVET in terms of rural transformation, particularly picking up on poverty alleviation and the green futures that we need to be aware of in our development of societies. So we have our visiting scholars, Ping and Xueling, and they'll be with us for a year, and we hope to look at, they're language teachers, so they work in English language teaching in China. So some of the work we hope to do is to do some comparative look at language teaching here in Australia, but higher education teaching and learning more generally, particularly ICT and appropriate pedagogies, hosted by the School of Education and also the Northern Institute. And Charles Zhu from the School of Academic Languages and Learning and myself are working with these 2 ladies on these projects. Thank you very much.